SMT Nation, we back. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the preliminary results that we have as of right now over on Root Metrics. I'm going to go ahead and link this website for you here in the description box so you guys can check it out. But what I want to do is just kind of look at some of those early numbers. You will see that we do have some data that's provided from Root Metrics for the second half of 2022. So we got all of the data for the first half of 2022, and that was completed several months ago. Now we're starting to see these preliminary results that show us how the carriers are doing, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, with respect to the Root Metrics methodology of testing, which is a scientifically based testing firm. They go to, they go to the cellular carrier stores. They buy smartphones from them. Usually, what they do, I think, is they buy the model year Samsung Galaxy device. So they'll get the Ultra or the S22, whatever, and then they'll test the network there within the city, and they'll log multiple miles, many miles. So I'll show you guys, for example, here. Let's pick Knoxville, Tennessee, because all three carriers have a win share in that city. All right, so if you click on Knoxville, Tennessee, you'll see the overall performance, the network reliability, network accessibility, and then you get percentage rankings. And if you kind of click on some of the what's called the market stats, you can actually see the area where they drove and tested. So the main part of the city, a little bit of the outskirts on the surrounding perimeter. It tells you the miles driven, 841, 35 indoor locations, the population of the city, and then it gives you the date range that they tested. Now, this is important because if you lived in Nashville and you knew that your AT&T coverage, there were multiple sites down or they were doing maintenance and performance was completely lackluster, it's very possible that that may reflect it in the testing. Carriers do have bad days. I remember testing or looking at the data from Denver about 2 years ago or about a year and a half ago, and Denver must have had like some serious outages for T-Mobile. Their rating was like 17%. Well, you go to the next time they test there, and things have been resolved, obviously, and T-Mobile tested like 98%. All right, so those things can happen from time to time, but what are they supposed to do? They go there on the day they're there, and then they test, right? So you get all these metrics: the network speed, the data performance, all those things. And when you look at Knoxville, Tennessee, very common recurring theme we see is overall performance. All three are very good. Network reliability, that can vary by place to place. You'll see that they're all between 98% and 99%. See, that's a pretty good situation in Knoxville, Tennessee. You get the impression that in Knoxville, you can essentially choose your carrier based on some other thing like features or prices or plan perks. You don't have to pick it based on, root score awards. The accessibility piece, AT&T is down a little bit. Network speed, they're pretty close. T-Mobile the fastest though, based on this data, and by a pretty nice little margin, by a couple percentage points. Here's data performance. AT&T the lowest at 97.8, but T-Mobile the highest at 99.2. See, those are pretty good numbers. Calling shouldn't be an issue. You'll see T-Mobile struggling a little bit there at 96.3. The rest of them are over 97. And then texting performance, right? 98 for T-Mobile, 99 for AT&T. Not really an issue. So that's kind of how I look at it. That's kind of how I see it. All right. Now, when I look at the preliminary data for the cities that have been uploaded, all right, you see some big towns. You see some mid-sized towns, right? LA, right? That's essentially the largest market outside of, maybe you could make the argument for New York City. LA County, right? Massive. All right. So when I open up the market stats, I can look at the area tested, huge, expansive testing, almost 3,000 miles driven, 160 indoor locations, a population over 12 million people. They tested in the first few weeks of August there. All right. So this goes to show you, how they scored and how they tested. By far the best scientific testing, I think, out there in the market. It's not crowdsourced. It's done by this organization, and that's it. Now, if you go through all these original or preliminary numbers from all these, from all these cities, and we got this nice little mix: small towns like Toledo, larger towns like Tampa and LA and stuff like that. You'll see that Verizon has 29 of the first 47 markets with a shared win or an outright win. In fact, Verizon led with 18 outright wins and 29 of the 47 shared or outright wins. AT&T came in with 15 out of the 47 markets with shared or outright wins. I think it was one outright win for them, one market. And then T-Mobile came in with 8 shared wins, no outright wins. Now, these are preliminary numbers. There's more to come. We're going to probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100 plus markets tested. So probably in the course of the next few weeks, we're going to see more markets added as that data is collected, aggregated, and then put onto the map and onto these tables. And then at the end, when all the cities are done and being tested, they do their report and evaluation. All right. So here's my take as I went through a lot of these cities and I looked at some of these markets. Uh, and I did find the one right here that I forgot about the Tulsa. They got the outright win for T-Mobile, so that's good. I was hoping they weren't going to get a zero on this so far, but again, numbers are going to increase, right? We're going to have more markets tested, so be on the lookout for a follow-up video. But here's what I'm seeing. It looks to me like Verizon is back on the network excellence saddle. It looks like maybe there were a couple of testing halves where things were getting kind of rough. I think in the case of AT&T, they'll continue to win and win more shares, like outright wins and win share markets because of all their upgrades that they're doing in a lot of these major markets. T-Mobile, starting last year, we're starting to see more network improvements. Overall, obviously, they have the speed piece, but you got to be reliable too. And I think that's the nice thing about Root is your data has to be fast. Sure, that's one metric, but there's other things too. And that's kind of what I like. You got the calling, you got the texting, you have the accessibility piece, which is important. They measure how long it takes for you to start a download and finish it. Like accessibility and reliability, and these things come into play. Speed clearly isn't everything. In my opinion, if speed was everything, this would be loaded with T-Mobile because T-Mobile's N41 in terms of coverage is in the most places across the country. And clearly, it's not the only thing that matters. It's a factor, most definitely. But if speed was the most important thing, you would see a whole lot more pink dots here. But we do see more distribution for Verizon and, generally speaking, AT&T as well. But we do see some magenta sprinkled in there, right? You do see some pink dots. Obviously, Verizon's still not objectively the congested network, as some people, a very loud minority, will tell you. It's congestion is not a national problem for Verizon. And of course, as they upgrade and add tower sites and build more millimeter wave nodes, they build out more C-band, it becomes less and less of an issue. They deal with congestion just like any carrier does. But clearly in this testing, clearly in where people live, where a majority of the population of Americans live, congestion is not affecting their overall root scores. Uh, I know Verizon and AT&T are doing a lot with their tower modifications and modernizations. A lot of C-band is going up. They'll continue to focus on that. And then for T-Mobile, it may seem like it has slowed down, but I'm sure they're still upgrading N41 sites, right? They want to hit 265 million pops, 300 million pops of N41. That's kind of the next market, the next checkpoint, I should say. And they're obviously taking the Sprint Keep sites and they're converting them, and upgrading them with the new T-Mobile gear and getting all their N41 and N71 and all those things. So there are things that are ongoing that could affect scores, both in the good and the bad. Obviously, conversions and modifications and modernizations can impact performance temporarily. And if they test in those markets at those times, they could, bring down scores. But then in the long term, those upgrades will increase scores because of increased reliability, better speeds, better experience, and things like that. But this is where we are right now. This is kind of like phase one as these markets get updated, as the data gets put onto this report, preliminary numbers. It looks like Verizon is doing pretty well. I think everything just loud minority, it's overblown. Verizon clearly not the congested network. AT&T clearly is upgrading. A lot of people say that they're not doing enough. And then for the sake of T-Mobile, they're just not as bad as people think they are. They're problematic in some places, I think, just like any carrier is. But clearly they're improving. They're winning markets. And we'll continue to track them and see how they improve over time. All right, so trying to be objective, this is my takeaway. What do you take away from this data? What do you think of the numbers? Sound off in the comment section below. You are the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard. Like, share, subscribe for more. Turn on the bell notifications icon to never miss an upload. Links in the description for my Twitter, my Gmail address for business inquiries, and my Patreon page if you want to support us and get early access to content and exclusive live streams not found anywhere else. Thanks for watching. See you all on the next one. Peace.